When I finally told my dad the truth about the will, he turned a color I didn't even know was possible for a human face to turn. It wasn't just anger. It was pure, unadulterated shock, mixed with a sudden, bone-deep realization that everything he thought he controlled had just dissolved into ash. But honestly, what did he expect? He had spent the last year treating me like I was a contaminant, something to be bleached out of the house my mother had built, all while parading his newfound happiness in my face. The sheer nerve of him to demand loyalty after the way he kicked me out, less than 2 weeks after the funeral, was mind-boggling. I still sometimes wake up with the memory of that day. The sound of his voice cold and detached, the visual of my bags sitting on the driveway like trash. And now, seeing him practically begging. It was simultaneously the most satisfying and gut-wrenching moment of my life. I had to ask myself, and I'm asking you, after a year of absolute misery, was I really the monster he said I was for holding on to that secret? Or did I do exactly what needed to be done? It's a messy, complicated answer, I know, but I think to understand why I played it the way I did, you need to know the whole picture. Not just the explosion at the end, but the slow burn that got us there. My family, if you could even call it that anymore, had always been centered around my mom. My dad, Arthur, was a successful man, sure, an accountant who prided himself on efficiency and order, but he was also cold, distant, and seemingly incapable of emotional connection. My mom, Alina, was the exact opposite. She was warm, vibrant, and a force of nature. She was the one who filled our house with laughter and music, who organized the community events, and who, frankly, ran everything. Dad was content to sit in his office and let her handle the messy business of living. It seemed like a fine arrangement to me growing up. I was my mom's shadow. We were a unit. When she started getting sick, our world didn't just crack, it shattered. It started small, tiredness, an ache she brushed off as getting older, but quickly progressed into something we couldn't ignore. The diagnosis was bad, the kind that leaves you with nothing but questions and fears, and my mother, the strongest person I knew, was suddenly fragile. The next 2 years were a blur of hospitals, treatments, and heartbreaking goodbyes that were thankfully premature, but each one chipped away a piece of us. And through it all, Dad was efficient. He managed the finances, talked to the doctors about treatment plans, and made sure all the logistical details were covered with the sterile precision he applied to tax returns. But the emotional support, that was entirely on me. I watched him disconnect, treating her illness like another problem to be solved rather than a tragedy they were navigating together. He wasn't mean asterisk, he was just absent while present. I became my mom's primary caregiver. I took time off college, then dropped out completely when her condition worsened. I learned how to administer medications, manage her side effects, and somehow find things to make her laugh when she barely had the energy to speak. He'd come in, ask the necessary questions about her vitals, pat her hand, and then retreat back to his office, citing pressing work or some other excuse to maintain his emotional distance. We never talked about it. Mom and we talked about everything, the future, her fears, the house, me, but we never discussed why Dad was treating his dying wife like a difficult client. The hardest conversations we had were about the house. My mom adored this place. She had inherited a significant amount of money and property from her own parents, including this huge, beautiful Victorian home that we lived in. She had poured her soul into renovating it, filling it with antiques and memories. One evening, not long before she passed, she took my hand, her voice a fragile whisper. "This house is my legacy to you, sweetie," she told me, her eyes clouded but determined. "Your father, he loves this place too, but for him, it's about the structure, the investment. For us, it's about the home. I've made sure you will always have this anchor." I just nodded and held her hand, too choked up to speak, not fully grasping the weight of what she was saying, assuming she meant I'd get the house eventually, as any child would. I didn't think for a second about the specifics or that I'd need to worry about Dad. It was just a comforting sentiment in a moment of despair. Then the inevitable happened. She died on a Tuesday, and the light in our lives just went out. The grief was a physical thing, heavy and crushing. The funeral was a massive affair, a testament to how many lives she'd touched, but I barely remember any of it. I just remember the cold. The house, which had always felt so alive, was suddenly a mausoleum. I stayed with Dad, both of us going through the motions, barely speaking. I figured we were just processing, that we were united in our loss. It was less than 2 weeks later when the other shoe dropped. I was in the kitchen, barely having touched my breakfast, when Dad walked in. He looked better than he had in months, sharp suit, freshly shaved, like the weight of the world had been lifted. He poured himself a coffee and stood by the counter, not meeting my eyes. "So, I've been thinking," he started, his voice casual. "You need to figure out what you're doing. This house is a lot of upkeep, and you're an adult now. You can't just hang around here forever." I was stunned. "Dad, Mom died asterisk 2 weeks ago. I haven't even processed everything yet. Dropping out of school, taking care of her. I need some time to breathe." He sighed, that same dismissive sigh he'd give when I had trouble with my math homework. "I understand you're grieving, we both are, but you need to move on. I need space. This place has too many memories right now, and frankly, I need to get things organized." Then came the kicker. "You need to be packed and gone by the end of the month. I've already talked to an agent about putting the house on the market." The room felt like it was spinning. This was my home. The place my mother had left me as her legacy. The place she loved more than anything. And he was just selling it without even asking me. "Selling it, Mom wanted me to have this house. She said it was my anchor." He finally looked at me and his eyes were like flint. "She said asterisk a lot of things, but she didn't make a will. Everything is joint. The house, the money, it's all mine now. I'm the one who paid the mortgage. I'm the one who dealt with the taxes. I'm the one who maintained it. This is asterisk my asterisk decision. You need to start making your own." I lost it. I screamed, I cried, I told him how selfish he was, how he'd abandoned Mom emotionally, and now he was doing it to me. He just stood there, waiting for my outburst to finish, and when I was finally gasping for air, he coolly said, "Your things are by the garage. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." He was kicking me out, not just from my childhood home, but from his life. He didn't offer help, he didn't offer storage, he just wanted me gone. The shock was paralyzing. I packed what I could into my car, leaving so much behind, tears blurring my vision. My friends rallied around me, giving me a place to crash on their couch, but the hurt was deep and festering. I wasn't just grieving my mother, I was processing the ultimate betrayal from my father. I could still hear his voice, so callous. "She didn't make a will. It's all mine now." That was the lie that powered my anger. Because you see, what he asterisk didn't asterisk know, what he hadn't cared to find out during all those years he was too busy to emotionally engage with his family, was that my mother was a very, very smart woman. About 2 days after I packed my final bag, I was in a cafe, staring blankly at my phone when I got an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. The subject line: "Regarding the estate of Eleanor Thompson." My heart did a slow, heavy thud. It wasn't my father's lawyer. It was her asterisk own asterisk separate counsel. The consultation appointment was for the following Monday. Walking into that attorney's office, a sterile, quiet room that smelled like old paper and expensive furniture, felt surreal. The lawyer, a kind-faced woman named Ms. Henderson, offered me a faint smile and laid out a thick, official-looking folder. "I was your mother's personal attorney for many years, dear," she began gently. "She was very clear that this information was only to be shared with you after her passing, specifically if things with your father went the way she anticipated." She pulled out the document. The date on it was from over 5 years ago, long before she got sick. The first page read in bold letters, "The last will and testament of EleanorcatherneTHOMPSON." I almost fell off my chair. He had lied to me. He said there was no will. And Miss Henderson started reading. It turned out my mother had been brilliant. The house, it hadn't been jointly owned. Her parents, distrustful of my father's business-first attitude, had structured the inheritance. The title for the house and the majority of her significant personal funds were held in her name only, or in a separate trust that was entirely her own property. My father had simply been paying the mortgage, yes, but he had no ownership. And in that will, written with surprising clarity for someone as vibrant and seemingly unconcerned with legalities as my mother, she had left asterisk everything directly to me. The Victorian home, the antiques, the funds, they were all mine. The only thing my father was entitled to was the money they had in their shared checking account and some smaller, personal items they had acquired together. The attorney paused and looked at me, her expression serious. "Essentially, your father has been living in your house, spending some of your potential funds, and he has zero right to sell the property. This document is fully executed, witnessed, and legally binding." The wave of relief and validation was so intense it almost made me sick. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a child who just didn't understand how the world worked. I had been told the truth by my mother, and lied to buy my father. But then, a colder, more calculating feeling settled over me. He had used this lie to throw me out. He had intended to sell my heritage for his own gain, completely discarding me in the process. He thought he had all the power, and he was using it to crush me. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to just show him the will. I wasn't going to stop him from doing what he was doing. I was going to let him dig his own grave, and I was going to watch him do it. So that's where I was. Homeless on my friend's couch, with the literal deed to my father's world in my pocket and him thinking he was a king. I didn't tell him I found the will. I didn't contest his decision to sell. I didn't say a word. For the next 6 months, I was a ghost. I got a job, I saved up for a small apartment, and I started putting my life back together, all while watching the online listing for our home. I saw the pictures he had taken, staged, cold, all of Mom's warmth stripped away. I saw the price he was asking, a huge sum that he clearly thought was his retirement plan. And all the while, I was working with Ms. Henderson. We were preparing everything, getting the probate started quietly, securing the trust, ensuring all the legal dominoes were lined up. I was effectively the silent landlord of my own home, just waiting for the moment to evict the unauthorized tenant. It was the hardest secret to keep, but it was also the most potent weapon I had ever held. So I need you to understand that, before I tell you what happened next, that was my situation. He kicked me out, used a lie about my dead mother to justify it, and tried to sell my inheritance. So before I reveal what I finally did, I want you to pause and tell me in the comments below, what would you have done? Would you have confronted him immediately and potentially had to fight a legal battle from a place of weakness? Or would you have played the long game like I did? Okay, the situation exploded about 9 months later. The listing for the house had sat there for a long time, the high price tag deterring some, the unique nature of the Victorian home others. But finally, a buyer appeared, a wealthy couple looking for a project, and they were apparently ready to pull the trigger. They were in the due diligence phase, which is when the real fun begins. Dad must have been ecstatic. He probably already had his retirement condo picked out, his travel plans made. He hadn't spoken to me in months, and frankly, I was fine with it. I only found out about the impending sale because the title company contacted Ms. Henderson, as the existing title had my mother's name on it and they needed clarification. This was the moment. The closing was scheduled for the following Friday. Ms. Henderson and I were ready. On Wednesday morning, I walked into the very law firm my father used, but I didn't have an appointment with his accountant lawyer. I had an appointment with the managing partner. I presented the fully probated and executed will. The partner's expression went from mild confusion to total panic within seconds. I think he saw the impending lawsuit of the century flashing before his eyes. He immediately put in a call to my dad. I got a text 5 minutes later for the first time in months. It just said, "What did you do?" I didn't reply. I was at the coffee shop down the street, waiting. About 20 minutes later, I saw his BMW screech into the parking lot. He didn't even park properly. He just left the car half on the curb and stormed inside the law firm. 10 minutes after that, my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Calls, texts, everything, I let them all go to voicemail. "You think this is funny? What kind of game are you playing? I'm your father, you can't do this." He was clearly spinning out of control. When I finally decided to answer the 5th call, his voice was distorted with rage and panic. "Arthur Thompson speaking," I said, my voice dead calm. "Where is the will? What lie did you tell them? I didn't sign anything." "Mom did," I said. 5 years ago, she had a whole team. Ms. Henderson, remember her?" I could practically hear his brain short-circuit. The silence was deafening for a full minute. "What are you talking about? There was no will. The property was joint. Everything was." His voice trailed off, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He must have finally understood that all those years he ignored my mother's activities, her independent finances, her entire life outside of his control. It had all culminated in this. I didn't say anything, I just let him sit with that. "This can't be real," he finally whispered, the anger replaced by a fragile, terrifying kind of shock. "You can't just take everything. It's my home. I've lived here for 30 years. "No," I said, the words tasting like victory and ash at the same time. "It was our home until you kicked me out less than a month after Mom died." It was her home, the legacy she left for me. You tried to sell it, Dad. You tried to sell my inheritance on a lie. You treated me like I was a problem you could just delete. Well, you can't delete a legal document. The closing on Friday. It's not happening. The sale is canceled. The next hour was a complete storm of him yelling, begging, and threatening, which only served to harden my resolve. When he tried to switch tactics and pull the family card, talking about how we needed to stick together, I just hung up. That Friday, the real estate agent had the joy of telling the prospective buyers that the sale was off due to title issues. I don't think they were very understanding. The fallout was immediate. The law firm representing my father was now exposed to massive potential liability for facilitating an illegal sale. My dad was now, for all intents and purposes, a tenant at sufferance in a house he didn't own, with all of his retirement plans evaporated. He had spent months lying, not just to me, but to himself, to the agent, and to his own lawyers. And it had all come crash, bang, wallop into reality. He tried everything. He offered to buy the house from me at a heavily discounted rate. He offered to pay me a rental fee if I let him stay. He even got his sister, my Aunt Marie, who I hadn't spoken to in years, to call and guilt me about what Mom would have wanted. I laughed at that one. What Mom would have wanted? She wanted me to have the house. She wanted to know I was safe. And he had deliberately violated that. That phone call with Aunt Marie was the last straw. I told her to get her brother to pack his bags because I was going to be occupying my property by the end of the month. I gave him a taste of his own medicine. A cold, formal letter, served by Ms. Henderson's office, giving him exactly 30 days to vacate the premises, citing my intention to move back into my rightful home. It was brutal, I know, but after what he had done to me, it felt entirely earned. The 30 days were a nightmare of him calling, his friends calling, his lawyer calling. I just referred everyone to Ms. Henderson. When move-out day arrived, I showed up with a police officer, just in case. My dad was there, looking like he had aged 20 years in a single month. His efficient accountant facade was gone, replaced by a broken man who had realized too late that everything he built was based on a fundamental lie of his own making. He had taken so much for granted, his wife's loyalty, his son's passivity, and his own perceived control. He didn't even look at me as he loaded the last of his boxes into a small U-Haul. The car that had been his, my kid is gone, let's live it up, purchase was now packed with his entire life. The irony was suffocating. As he drove away, not even slowing down to look at me, I felt a strange mix of profound triumph and profound sadness. I had my home back. I had my inheritance. I had proved my father was a liar. But the cost was immense. My relationship with the only remaining parent I had was gone. I stood on the porch of the Victorian house, the one Mom had loved so much, and for the first time in almost a year I felt like I could breathe. The coldness was gone. Looking back on it all now, I don't regret it. I really don't. Yes, what I did was calculated. I let him dig his own hole. But I didn't create the hole. He did. He created it with every dismissive word to my mother, with every moment he was too busy for his family, and finally, with that one big, devastating lie about the will to throw me out. He chose his path. He chose order over love, control over connection, and money over family. He didn't think I had it in me to fight back, especially not from such a low point. But my mother, the woman who had left me that anchor, she had also left me her strength and her intelligence. He undervalued us both, and that's why he lost. In the end, he was the architect of his own downfall, and I was just the one who revealed the cracks in the foundation he'd been pretending was solid. The moral of this whole mess, maybe it's that you should never underestimate the quiet ones, or the strength a mother leaves behind, or the power of a legally binding document. My dad thought he knew everything, but he didn't know the most important thing of all, what my mother's will really said, and what I was truly capable of. If you're on my side and think that after everything he did, he got exactly what he deserved, please like this video. Your support actually means a lot. For more stories of people standing their ground and getting a little creative with the consequences, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And seriously, I want to hear your final thoughts on this whole thing. Was my long game revenge justified, or did I go too far? Share your opinions in the comments section below. I'll be reading them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next story.